Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Castaway Anime Podcast. I'm Neon Manta.
And I'm Crunchy Bagels.
And we're back with week 3 of Shinkai Month, the month where we marathon all of Makoto Shinkai's feature films in preparation for Suzume's release in April. And today we're going to be talking about the big one, everyone's favorite movie ever, especially guys named Crunchy Bagels, Your Name. And if you want to hear our names some more, then please be sure to like the video, tell us what you think in the comments, and subscribe to the channel to keep up to date on new episodes of the podcast.
So Neon Man, we have to get this question out of the way. What do you think of Your Name?
I mean, Neon Manta is a pretty cool name. Some of my friends like to give me shit for it sometimes, but Manta rays are cool. Neons are cool colors always, so I put them together. It's a cool tag.
You know, I do think it does roll off the tongue quite nicely. As for me, on my end of things, I think Crunchy Bagels is just sort of like a quirky, fun username that everyone can remember instantly, and it's easy to type in. Now, I think for marketing purposes, it's very good, and for personal purposes, it's even better. Anyway, we got the joke out of the way.
Bagels are, in fact, crunchy.
They are, in fact.
No one wants to eat a chewy bagel.
I mean, I have eaten chewy bagels before.
I have too, but they're just not as good. That's when I'm lazy.
Yeah.
Alright.
So yeah, we got the obvious joke out of the way.
Alright, but for real now, this is the one everyone's been waiting for. This is playing YouTube anime YouTube on easy mode. Your Name is one of the most popular anime movies of all time. Definitely, arguably the most popular of like the modern era, the last decade. Cause goddamn, did this movie make some waves in the world.
目が覚めても忘れないようにさ。名前書いとこうぜ。
これじゃ名前わかんないよ。
It is so popular that it was, in fact, my second anime way back in the day. After Dragon Maid, I moved on to Your Name, of all things, from
I thought Kill la Kill was your second anime.
Oh, okay, well, it's the second anime I watched to completion, because Kill la Kill, I stopped watching after episode 2, which I'm sure I'll want to punch my old self in the face for that one.
Yeah, we'll have to remedy that one of these days. But Your Name, it's critically and generally acclaimed by damn near everyone on the planet. It's the most popular movie on my anime list. It's ranked
it's ranked what?
I was gonna say it's ranked 201st on Letterboxd top 250 movies of all time, and it was and it was the highest grossing anime film of all time for a few years until we talked about this in the first Shinkai month cast, and I since figured out the reason for it. In 2019, Spirited Away was released theatrically in China, and it did so well that it took its spot back.
Probably deservedly so, although I haven't actually seen Spirited Away. There's so many movies I need to get to.
Yeah, and then, of course, Demon Slayer Mugen Train came, and then a year later and shit-stomped both of them.
You said that Your Name is one of the most acclaimed anime movies of all time, and it is very much true, but I think it is worth noting that this movie's average score has been... I wouldn't say on a downward spiral per se, because it's still an 8.85. It's still, very well loved. But there was a time way back when it was literally the highest rated anime on Mal.
Yeah,
and I remember
Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood for a time.
And I still, I remember way back when I made my first Your Name video, it was, I think, still above a 9. And, since then, especially the YouTube videos, from what I've seen, have gotten a little more negative in retrospect, going like, oh, hey, there's like tons of plot holes in it. It's got some issues, right? And one of those YouTube videos, albeit, not one of the popular ones, perhaps fortunately, was mine. I have baggage going into this movie.
This could be the beginning of the Crunchy Bagels Your Name redemption arc. Because if fans of your channel, if they watch this, should know that they. Well, what year did your name video come out? Your first one?
2020, around April or May of that year, and although not popular in the grand scheme of things, it is nonetheless a channel meme. Literally the other day, maybe like a week or two ago, I got a comment asking me to review Bocchi, and then they replied to their own comment saying, actually, I just checked your AniList because I was afraid you your named it, but no, you actually like it. And so...
Your reputation precedes you.
Yeah, it has a bit of a reputation on my channel. And I know it as probably one of the worst videos I've ever done. And I've thought that even before I rewatched Your Name, I've long since disagreed with some of the points I made in that video and thought that tonally it's just... I sound like an asshole. The entire video is just nothing but me being an asshole.
You do kind of like beat down the movie the whole time, but then barely say any good things about it.
I like say two good things at the beginning, that like it has good visuals and it carries its emotions well, and I go into them for like 20 seconds, and then I'm just way back to beating Shinkai to death.
And then you ended up making a follow-up video to it, right?
It's marketed as a follow-up more so than it actually is a follow-up, because I mean I assume you've watched it, where it's mostly just me making this broader point about how your first impression of a show will never be your last, and Your Name is the example I give, but I don't necessarily give much of a justification as to why. The video just sort of assumes that, hey, there's this other video where I explain my points about the show in depth, and you can always watch that if you're really curious. I'm making this other unrelated point, but I'm using Your Name as an example. And that video is actually still good. I still really like that video. But the original one, I want to smack my old self and be like, no, you stupid. You're dumb. Don't say that.
Yeah, we pretty much had like polar opposite first impressions of Your Name when we first watched it for the first time. I watched it for the first time in 2017 when it hit North American theaters through Funimation, and it was, well, I remember it being one of like the most mind-blowing theater experiences I've ever had. But that was in retrospect, that was mostly because at that time theatrical anime movies weren't as common as they are now. Like they were happening all the way back in like the days of fucking the Pokemon movie, because that was like a big phenomenon when it hit theaters. But we had stuff like the Ghibli movies. We had stuff like the Pokemon movie, the Digimon movie. Outside of Ghibli and like maybe the occasional Mamoru Hosoda film or critically acclaimed anime movie like that, we didn't really get too many anime movies coming over to the West that weren't related to a franchise. And so nowadays with companies like Crunchyroll, Funimation, and G-Kids, who are just bringing over all sorts of anime movies from past and present to North American theaters, so we can have the big silver screen experience the way the Japanese audiences do. It's real good for the industry. I think it's probably the best thing to have happened to the anime industry as a whole in the past decade.
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair take.
And we're getting ready for Suzume coming in next month, which is the entire progenitor of the Shinkai month marathon. So that's how we're gonna wrap the whole thing up in a nice little bow. But we got 2 more podcasts to do before we get to that one. We got Weathering with You next week, and we got Your Name today. When I came out of the theater in Your Name in 2017, 6 years ago, I thought, I was like, damn, this movie was fucking amazing. It was a near masterpiece, easy 9 out of 10. It was so incredible. nowadays,
Oof, we're getting ready for it.
yeah, we are getting ready for it. But let's lead them on a little bit. Let's tease the audience a little bit more. What did you think of your was this your second viewing of the movie or your third?
Yes, second viewing of the movie ever. And I had a surprisingly good memory of it because, I had to pretty much memorize the plot in order to make that review way back in the day. But, there's a lot more details I picked up on, a lot of things that I didn't expect going back and that hit me surprisingly hard. I guess I'll start with this. If you give this movie a 10 out of 10, you've seen 3 movies.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's true, but you're not supposed to say it out loud.
It's just factual, right? It's impossible to give this movie a 10 once you've seen more than like 3 movies.
Yeah.
That's my take, legitimately.
I have a similar take nowadays. Like, this movie is one of the greatest movies to ever watch one time and then never watch it again. It is one of the worst movies to rewatch, because it's not that it becomes a bad movie on rewatch. It becomes, oh, I'm noticing everything that Shinkai did to cover up all of the like glaringly awful and obvious plot holes and contrivances. And now it's like,
see. Oh, you can continue real quick.
I was just gonna say,
I do have a point.
It's like, and it's frustrating because you can see where the masterpiece that everyone like says it is, and the like near masterpiece movie I thought it was when I first saw it 6 years ago. But now that I know what happens in it and know like the sequence and order of events, and I'm thinking about it, I'm like, this doesn't hold up on the rewatch.
I'll give you this. There is one specific moment in the film that I'm sure both of us agree on where, because I had seen it before and because I knew where the plot went, the second we got to that scene, I burst out laughing because I just know. I know where it goes from there, and I know that what's happening is patently ridiculous. But I have a bit of a different experience with the film because I already sort of like I went hard on the plot during my first viewing of the movie. Admittedly, I did quite enjoy myself, but then it was only in retrospect that I was like, wait, actually, I don't really care for the characters or the plot that much. That was my impression of it upon a first viewing. And I came to realize pretty quickly that, oh wait, what I watched just patently made no sense. And then I took to literally dissecting the plot bit by bit to find every conceivable plot hole you could even dream of. And some of them were just flat out wrong because I was an idiot. But a lot of them were still right and are still, pressing issues with the film. And I did notice a few issues with the film that I didn't on a first viewing. But I guess I'll just I'll drop it right now. Your Name is a good movie. It's just not a masterpiece. If you think it's a masterpiece, if you think it's a masterpiece, you've seen like barely any movies, but it is a good time. And I was surprised. I expected to be bored on a second viewing. I was like, there's no way this is gonna hold up. There's zero chance that upon knowing all the plot holes, I will ever get invested in this movie in the slightest. And then, honestly, Neon, fuck you for making me rewatch this and realize how wrong I was.
Well, here's the thing about it. Like, this is especially evident having just seen all of Shinkai's feature filmography leading up to this point in chronological order. Your Name has an energy that is just non-existent in all of his previous movies. Like, you can understand now why this guy who is he was being heralded as the next Miyazaki for like a few years at this point, but you can see why now all of a sudden it like the claims blew up to such a degree where it's like Shinkai was like, guys, please stop. I'm like, this is embarrassing. There's like such a passion and an energy to this movie that like is completely non-existent in fucking Place Promised in Our Early Days, doesn't exist in 5 centimeters, doesn't exist in Children Who Chase Lost Voices. There's like the wit, the spirit of like the humor and the wit is kind of there. I think the humor is a little sharper in Garden of Words, but outside of those movies, like Your Name is like incredibly upbeat. It is very, it can be frenetic at times, and it's a very moving movie. Like there's a lot of moving parts to it, and a lot of layers and mechanics. Whereas you can, even though the way that they're structured, the previous Shinkai movies, even if they're structured in a way that like sounds complex when you put it on paper, but then it's like pretty digestible. You can boil them down to like very base elements. It's harder to do that for Your Name with just the amount of things that are inside of it. Like this movie has content.
It is very high concept, and going back to what you were saying about the movie's energy, that I think is one of the things that makes it so legitimately enjoyable, because although Garden of Words does have sharply written dialogue and is fun and upbeat at times, it is incredibly atmospheric. Garden of Words tries very hard to set up an atmosphere early on, and it does succeed. It's very atmospheric, and I do like that atmosphere, but it does not have the same energy that Your Name does, where Your Name almost feels bubbly. Like, I was shocked at how many times I burst out laughing. Granted, there was one time where it was for the wrong reason, but for the right reasons a lot of the time. Like, when Taki's friend is reminiscing about how the previous day he was acting all weird, he blushes and says, "You were kinda cute yesterday." Yeah. And Taki is like, "What?" Or like when Mitsuha sends him dating advice, and it's just like how to talk to girls for complete loser no-lives who never talk to women. And Taki's just like, she's making fun of me.
Yeah, I like the sharper humor of Garden of Words overall more, but this movie just has more comedic moments than Garden of Words, which, you know, depending on what you value in your humor, might be more worth it to you.
I think the humor in this movie does surpass Garden of Words to me, where there's just so many. I mean, okay, I'm probably hyping it up a little too much. It's not like a straight up comedy film, right? There's like huge stretches of time where you won't laugh a single time, but the laughs that you do get are like very good laughs. Like when Taki and Mitsuha's body is like crying while also groping her tits.
Yeah, and that's only funny because they've built it up throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
The movie, after this incredible, by the way, pretty much TV anime opening that goes on, which is like really expertly directed. It probably, if it were a TV show, would win OP of the year, probably. Whatever year it came out, yeah, 2016. So the first thing like that happens in the movie is Taki wakes up in Mitsuha's body, and he gets up, like notices that he has tits now, and starts fondling his/her own tits. And gets walked in on by Mitsuha's little sister, who berates her for it, and then strips down to get changed because he thinks it's just a dream. But then it's like, oh shit, these boobies are real. And so then we get like several instances of him like fondling his tits, because there's one joke that is a great prelude to the crying while fondling one, and it's he wakes up at this point. It seems like they've been body swapping for a while, and it seems like he has a little more respect for Mitsuha. Like he's about to do it, and he goes, "I shouldn't, for her sake." And then her little sister walks in, and he's fucking doing it anyway.
That one was another great guffaw from me. There are a lot of very good jokes in this movie. And I think that is, like I said, what makes it so entertaining. On top of, like you were saying, just the sheer amount of stuff going on. It's like, it's every genre in a way. Primarily like disaster and romance, but you know, you get this like really trippy segment around like the end of the second act where Taki drinks the e-girl spit and gets transported back into her body, and it's like very art housey and surreal looking. And there's like a lot of mysticism too on top of that, which is mostly a mechanic in the story so that Shinkai can just write whatever and not have to think about making it make any semblance of sense. But nonetheless, it gives, it helps build a very specific atmosphere, and we get a lot into that. And we get Masubi and also just normal slice of life shenanigans, and there's an adventure segment, and there's this high stakes segment where they have to like blow up this building in order to convince the town that hey, there's like terrorism happening, you need to leave right now. It's packed. And I guess that brings me into another point I have. This movie is like really well paced. Like, insanely well paced.
I do think there's a bit of a slow patch in the middle between the Mitsuha, the sister and the grandmother visiting that site, Taki and Okudera's date, and then Taki going to find Mitsuha's town. I feel like that was just like too much of like 3 slower paced sequences strung back to back.
In fairness, I was like, while watching the movie, I was anticipating, okay, like it really felt we were about to move on to the second act of the story, and then it continued, and I was like, wait, this is way longer than I remember it being. I remember this movie getting to the point like 30-40 minutes in, but no, it's like still going. But they did not bore me.
Yeah, I wasn't bored during the slow patch because like I was still invested into the characters and the story at this point, but it was just it was an extended slow patch, especially considering we had just gotten through with like a big montage sequence that is like incredibly fast paced, and honestly probably one of the greatest montage sequences in cinema history, and not for the reason you'd think. Not for like because maybe it's like a really well directed montage, a lot of memorable moments. No, it's pulling double duty,
making you forget all the plot holes that are in that segment.
Yeah, so I guess we can tackle that as like the big sticking point of the movie that I know you and I have.
Biggest issue with this movie by far that I will never get over. So the whole conceit of this movie is that Taki is not just body switching with Mitsuha, but that he is body switching into the past. Why didn't he check a calendar?
Well, it's not that, like, here, the thing of him not immediately checking what the date is one thing, because it's fair to assume that he has no reason to believe at that point that he's switching through time, but it does like raise the question, like, how we see them on their phones constantly. How do they not like realize that, hey, wait a second, today is like fucking February the 27th, but it should be a Friday, but today's a Wednesday for some reason. That's odd.
Yeah, like, it's not that Taki has to check the calendar immediately. And we'll get, there's another, more issues with this segment that are of a similar line of logic that we'll surely get into. But it's like, the problem isn't that he doesn't immediately check the date, it's that he goes many months body switching with her, and no point like looks at a calendar. Like right now on my wall, I have a calendar that says the month and the year. Maybe, Mitsuha doesn't have that in her house for some reason. Maybe her entire house doesn't have a calendar. I mean, that's already hard to believe in the first place, but sure, we'll go with it. But then, at school, they always have the date up on the whiteboard, at least in American schools, but I guess they just don't have it in Mitsuha's school.
Yeah, but you have
none of her friends.
I'm sure you have to date your papers still in Japanese school with the year.
I mean, I never dated my papers because I was just lazy, but you're supposed to in American schools, and Japanese schools are supposed to be, more strict than American ones. Why do they just not date their papers? Does she just not memorize the day of the week? There's so many, you can excuse it if you want, but it's such a stack of contrivances that is just impossible to possibly buy into. It's like the odds of this happening are like 1 in a trillion.
Yeah, it's like like you can like construe a way for neither of them to check the date, but for them to go so long without having to without noticing, hey, that's odd. Like 3 years is like not that long a gap of time in like the grand scheme of life, but considering like the way things change in the world, like this I'm of course we never actually them to like call their friends numbers, like because they call each other's phone numbers at one point, and they can't get to them even though they can text each other and leave messages for each other, but like they only think to call their own friends. I mean, and they're not their own friends. They only think to call themselves. They never think to call, like, Mitsuha's never like, maybe if I call fucking what's his name, like Teshi or Sayaka's number, or Taki's like, hey, maybe if I call Tsukasa or Okudero's number from Mitsuha's phone. Like, you could also once again construe the argument of like, hey, why am I getting a call from some rando? It could be like a spam call or whatever, but like the fact that it never even crosses their mind is what like is the most damning thing. Like, if they brought it up and then gave a good enough excuse as to why they couldn't do it, then that's one thing. But like, you mean to tell me that they thought to write on each other's bodies and leave text and journal entries on their phones, but for months, but they never once thought to just like, hey, what if I just give them a dial on the old digits?
Yeah, like, okay, so this you can excuse it as not being a plot hole because Taki and Mitsuha call each other, or at least attempt to later in the film. But my question going through the montage is, why is that not the first thing they think of? Because Mitsuha, the first time she tries to call Taki is when she's already in Tokyo for some reason. And you can, extrapolate and say like, oh, maybe she tried to call before, but it didn't go through, so she tried Tokyo. But it's like, it feels like you'd show that. It feels like that, like there's no reason not to. Because it could even be another thing, leading to the mystery, like, I tried to call them, but it never goes through. Why does it never go through? You can think along those lines, and that wouldn't be a plot hole, and it'd show that, like, hey, they are trying to get into contact with each other. They could, like, try texting online. But instead, I guess they just don't think of it until, like, the last minute. For some reason, like the first time Taki tries to call Mitsuha is when the comet is like about to fall down, on Mitsuha's end, that is. On Taki's end, he's like, what is she even talking about? And he tries to call her in order to see like, oh, what is she talking about? And it doesn't go through. That's rather late to try calling her. That's rather late for it to be the first time the viewer sees him try to call her at the very least.
Yeah, like there's so many moments that like on rewatch that I'm watching like, why aren't you doing this, or like, how have you not noticed this? Or I still don't understand how like the magic force that is like making them forget each other's names, which also I feel like they lean a little too hard on by having them conveniently forget each other's names without having any without any vision. My big issue with that is like less the amount of times that it happens and more of the there's no indicator or like cue or like visual or audio cue that they're forgetting or like that their minds are being manipulated. It just makes it come across like they're just chronic amnesiacs.
I mean, to be fair, I did make that joke in my own head while watching the movie, but there not being like a visual or audio cue isn't so much of a big deal to me. It's that the rate at which they forget is so inconsistent. Because throughout much of the movie, it's shown that like they don't have good memory of the time they spend in each other's body. They can get like brief flashes of deja vu. They like can picture like these vague memories, but you know, it's not really crystal clear. They mostly know each other from interacting in their own bodies, through writing on each other's body and writing in each other's diary on their phones. But like, what did I just say? Oh yeah, okay. So it's that like it's so inconsistent because they remember each other's names at the very least throughout that time, but
Until they
then
don't.
they just suddenly forget each other's names when it's most convenient for the story, and it's like, but why? You know, it's like set up as a mechanic, but the mechanic is so ill-defined that the Shinkai can just do anything with it, which is a running theme throughout much of the film. Mechanics, there are explanations, you can excuse it all if you want, but it's very much Shinkai just using a lack of definition and exact mechanics to his advantage in order to have to not try too hard in crafting this film.
Yeah, and like here's one thing that I never even thought of until like just watching it again. Like even after between my first viewing and my second viewing, where I realized that there were plot holes with the time thing. On this viewing, I was like, wait, how like not only does he not remember the like Mitsu's name, which is one thing, but like how does he not remember the town name that he was in when he was in Mitsuha's body? Because, like, even if, like, when you're, like, fucking switch bodies with someone, you generally always, like, will know where you are at any given moment, even when you are displaced from space and time, like he's being. It's generally one of the first things a person will do is to figure out where they are, because, like, that's just, like, a common human thing.
Worse than that, though. It's so much worse, because, okay, so imagine you're switching bodies with someone and you have like a very poor memory of like what you did. So obviously, your knowledge of the area is not going to stack time after time. You're not going to get used to navigating the area. So to smooth over that transition, the natural thing to do, one of the first things you would do is say, all right, here's where you are, here's where everything is. Here is a map of the area. And you have that on like your phone, you text it to them. Or like, put it in their diary and be like, okay, here's, what the layout of Itamori is. You could draw, write it on his hand and be like, yeah, here's where you go. You can excuse it. You can say, well, maybe they just didn't think to do that. But it's like, the contrivances are stacking up. It's really weird how he wouldn't instantly know. Here's Itamori. I'm here. There's like a bunch of, he should have like a lay of the land and where everything is. And to be fair, he does have like deja vu and ends up like drawing a picture or multiple pictures rather.
Well,
of, like,
yeah, that's the thing
is.
though. You mean to tell me that like even when they establish that like their memories of their switching gets hazy and they have a hard time recalling things, but like even with like vague glimpses of like those visions, you mean to tell me that he can draw picture perfect recreations of the entire town in just just after spending just like a couple months there at most, but he can't remember the damn name?
I can't even do that for my own town, and I've lived here for like 2 years.
Yeah, even if
I could give
like
you the layout,
the...
but I could not draw the houses with exact detail.
Yeah, like and even then, he should if he can't remember Itamori in like the abstract sense of where Mitsuha is, he should still know that like the Itamori incident with the comet happened, and like in this universe, a comet hit Japan and destroyed like an entire town, is wiped off the map. Hundreds are dead. This is a national tragedy that happened. Like he should, and this is recent. This happened 3 years ago. This happened in his lifetime. In the not even a half a decade has passed. He should know about this. So like this is obviously not on the same scale, but this is like the equivalent of, I don't know, like a smaller scale third nuke going off in Japan, or like their 9/11 or their Hindenburg. Or like this is a certified national tragedy. That this made the news.
the thing is like, I could even, in a more structurally solid film, I can imagine myself buying into that, because, I mean, I myself am not very worldly and don't know anything about current events, but, like, although he is watching it on the wait, no, he's watching it on the TV, though. He saw it happen.
Yeah, he
Why
saw
doesn't
it
he
on
instantly know it's Itamori?
Yeah, he watches
okay, never
the
mind, I
broadcast
take
of
it back, I take it back.
Yeah, and like we don't see him watching the part of the broadcast where it's like, oh yeah, the oh guys, BT Dubs, the comet, when it split apart, it actually hit this town, and we're getting reports that like, yeah, there are no survivors, hundreds are dead. This is a national tragedy. Damn, that sucks, huh? And he doesn't remember that.
Yeah. Here's another one. So, okay, this is, you know what, the next one I'm gonna go into is the one that I laughed out loud at. So, when he first figures out that Itamori did die, he's like trying to show his friends proof that Mitsuha exists. So he goes to his phone and checks his diary, and it starts glitching out in real time and deleting itself, just wheeling itself out of existence, and it's never explained. Why did that happen?
It's like, it would have been so much more effective and less goofy if he had pulled out his phone and they just weren't there anymore, like they never existed to begin with. But no, we see the text glitch out, like someone is like hacking his phone
so
in real
goofy.
time.
Yeah, it's like cartoony hacking.
Like the Shinto shrine gods that are like overlooking this whole thing are like DDoSing his phone in real time. And just, you know what,
this has the same energy. This has the same energy of like when a hacker is depicted in fiction. They're like, you know, hacking into the mainframe. They're typing at like 1,000 words per minute, and then the person who's getting hacked, and he's got like the sunglasses.
They're
the person
dual
getting hacked.
Keyboards.
Oh, and no, you got to get this part. They're like, yeah, dual wielding keyboards, and also there's like a billion tabs on their screen, and then the person getting hacked, their computer screen lights up red. Their face just goes pure blinding red. They're like, oh no, I'm getting hacked. They're hacking into my mainframe. There's 10,000 viruses on my computer. Oh no. That's the energy this scene has.
Yeah, it's real goofy, and it doesn't like destroy the dramatic weight of the whole scene.
It did for me.
Like
I was really into it until that moment.
It takes
and then
a heavy blow. It takes a heavy blow, but like I wouldn't say it like outright ruins it. Otherwise, like
it
the whole
doesn't
film,
ruin all of it, but
yeah, but it's goofier than it needs to be. When all he had to do was just pull out his phone, it's like they're not there anymore, which would have been like way more like of a gut punch and like an oh shit moment.
Here's another bit. Did they ever explain why the grandma telling him in the one scene where they're like going back from the shrine, you know, she tells him, you're not Mitsuha, that he is like suddenly sent back into his own body? Did they ever explain how that works?
They imply that Mitsuha's grandmother, because like the second time she like figures it out, it's like, hey, you're not Mitsuha, when they're at the house and Taki's back in Mitsuha's body for the final time trying to start the evacuation plan. Her grandmother points it out. It's like, oh, you're not Mitsuha again. Yeah, like your dreams are a wonderful thing. She implies that this sort of like body switching thing has happened to members of her family before. Like it happened to her.
No,
I
get
to Mitsuha's
that
mother.
Much. It's happened for their. Okay, so that much is in the main text, and it's implied that it's been happening in their bloodline for ages at this point. But why does it send Taki back? That's my question. And it doesn't the second time. Is it just weird editing?
I think it's just like a pacing thing.
Because, I mean, I'm playing back the scene in my head, because I did go over the possibility that maybe he lifted out, but I also think that was like the same night that the same day that like later that day the comet was supposed to hit. I'm pretty sure, at least. It might have been the day before, but I'm pretty sure it was like the same day. I think that
first time was the day before, because...
okay, day before?
Yeah.
Okay. But, like, I'm just trying to rationalize, like, why you would show that, because I have the exact scene memorized. You know, she says that, then, you know, it shows Taki in, like, this black void, and he's, you know, looking all ghost-like, and then he suddenly wakes up. like in his own body. Why would you do it like that unless you're meaning to imply that he was suddenly sent back to his own body? I just don't get it.
I think that was the intention. Of course, since they're switching through time and space, that's just another one of the many hand-wavy things that Shinkai could just throw up. Which, were we able to hear that?
You said "and space." Explain that to me, because I thought it was just like their souls and minds getting transferred or something like that. Well, magic bullshit.
Well, space as in, they're switching places.
Oh, okay.
Whereas time, they're also going through time as well.
I thought you meant like actively displacing matter, but no, that's fair.
Yeah.
Let's see. I know there's other plot holes with this film. I think
order to go about tackling them. They'll just come up as we go, but I think we've scared off too many of the Your Name fans, the Shinkai fans. So now let's attempt to salvage this by talking about all the good things about the movie, because I know we've been bitching for the last 20 minutes, but there are good things about this movie.
My favorite thing about this movie, and the primary thing I'd say that made it so enjoyable, so legitimately and shockingly enjoyable upon rewatch, I don't know what my old self was talking about when he said Mitsuha was boring. Mitsuha's based. She's like my favorite character in the movie.
Are you trying to think of who my favorite? Yeah, I'd say probably Mitsuha. Granted,
for me, it's no competition.
I'm also thinking of all the time. I may be conflating it in my own head of all the times Taki is in Mitsuha's body. So like maybe I may be confusing some of her best moments with some of his technically best moments.
I mean, we can get into that when we get to that, because Taki has a couple moments where I just scream out based, but I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. I think Taki's pretty boring for the most part.
I do
pales
find
in comparison to Mitsuha. I
do like Mitsuha more than Taki, and I do think that it was a little strange of him to just up and decide like, hey, I'm going to, based on this hunch, I'm gonna go track down this town. And like that whole like quest that they set up it's also not helped that his friends Tsukasa and Okudera just like invite themselves on the journey.
It's even more messed when he's like, yeah, I'll go to the Shrine of the Gods because Masubi, man, I'm sure it'll send me back to Mitsuha.
But yeah,
I mean, we'll get to that when we get to that, but...
Well, like, what Taki lacks in, like, drive in the... Well, actually, no, that's fair, because once again, I'm thinking about the Mitsuha things. Because, like, well, it's his plan to ultimately save the town.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that being, like, super effective as, like, character building if I were more hooked into his personality. All right, so here's Taki's personality. I know we said we're going to be positive, but we sort of disagree on this point. So, Taki is a bit more standoffish. The girl he has a crush on actively says it at one point. She's like, you know, you're normally a little standoffish. He has a bandage on his face, implying he got into a fight when Mitsuha first switches into his body. And probably my favorite Taki moment is when all his classmates, he's in Mitsuha's body for this one, and all his classmates are talking shit about Mitsuha, and he like kicks a desk over and is like, you know, he doesn't say it, but his face communicates it entirely to them. I hear what you're saying, and bro, you don't faze me at all. You know, it's just this huge moment of like, yeah, you know, like not exactly standing up to them, but just communicating to them, you aren't affecting me at all, and I hear you, and I know exactly what you're doing. I thought that was awesome. But aside from that, he's not standoffish often enough for it to feel like a core part of his character. He is sometimes, and he has a very bro relationship with his bros, but he's just kind of nothing for the most part, except he really wants to save. You know, he has charming lines of dialogue. I'll give him that. But
Yeah,
compared to Mitsuha, it's like it's night and day to me.
Yeah, Mitsuha is definitely the more well-rounded and realized character. My favorite Taki moment, like that one him kicking over the desk, is great. My favorite Taki moment is when while he's in Mitsuha's body, a girl comes up to him/her and confesses her love, meaning that Taki is like so good. Like, I love this joke because it works on like multiple levels and like makes you think of like what's going on at play. He gets confessed to by both guys and girls, like the girl one especially, because it's a lesbian who is attracted to what she perceives as Mitsuha, but is actually just a dude in a girl's body, which is like it gets the noggin jogging like what kind of attraction this is being based in, which is just humorous for me to think about.
That is good, but yeah, it's like, I guess it is kind of funny that Taki, they both essentially end up being better versions of the other person, where Mitsuha gets literally hooks him up with Okudera, I think her name is, something like that. Okudera, and you know, Taki in Mitsuha's body starts getting confessed to and like stands her ground against the bullies. And that is humorous to me, but at the same time, it's like Taki has charming moments, but he himself is not a charming character for the most part. I feel like that's the best way I can describe it.
I slightly disagree with you there because I like the guy. I think the thing is, like, a lot of his best moments come from when he is in fact in Mitsuha's body, and like his best moments when he's himself in his own body, I think come from the journey he takes with Okudera and Tsukasa, when he's just like bouncing off of them, and like they have a little dynamic. My favorite moment from that journey is when they're at like this little roadside stop, and they Tsukasa and Okudera see this cow mascot, and Okudera's like, "Oh my god!" I knew
what scene you were gonna bring up.
Yeah, I mean, she's so fucking cute when she does that. She's like, she's bouncing up and down and like kicking her legs, like, "Oh my god, Taki, you seen this shit? He's so fucking adorable." And Taki's like, "You guys aren't helping at all."
He literally calls them annoying under his breath. That is, to be fair, they do have a lot of like good chemistry with each other. I just don't care for him all that much. Although, I think another part of it, this is probably going to be a controversial one. I don't really like his character design. It's not even like it's an incompetent or generic character design. I just, for whatever reason, I just see his design and I'm like, he's just some dude. Just that's the one thought I have in my brain. Even though he's not really a John Every anime, I just look at him, I'm like, he's just some dude. There's like nothing interesting about it.
I kind of understand where you're going for. Like, to me, Taki is like, if one guy spent his entire life like drawing nothing but John Every anime characters, like for 20 years,
Chad John anime.
Yeah, he like
John
this
Every
is
anime.
After like piles upon piles of papers and drafts and whatnot, and there's like he is like scientifically crafted the ultimate John Every anime. Like this is like the idealized perfect version of it.
You know what? Yeah, you put that into words perfectly. And I don't like it.
I'm in this
it's
weird
not
like
incompetent,
limbo,
but it's like
I do overall like the design. It's like it's nothing, mind blowing, but like as far as John Every animes go, he is the ultimate king. Obviously, Mitsuhasa has a way better design, but I feel like in these kinds of productions, the female characters, just because they are accessorized more, they just tend to have more striking and iconic designs.
But see, Tessie, I like Tessie's design more than Taki's.
I mean, his is just kind of like, obviously the John every anime design is like, you know, milk toast, average Japanese guy, average haircut, average looking face. And Teshi's, he's got, you know, the more scruffy, beat up looking face. He's got the short haircut. Like, might as well be like military buzz shaven.
It's like, I mean, his design isn't fantastic either, but it just, at the very least, it doesn't register in my brain as just some dude. All I can think while looking at Taki, and it's been this way for the longest time, is just, he's just some dude. Like, there's nothing special about him. I don't care about it. If he's in a crowd of people, I'll never be able to sort him out. You know, Mitsuha has like superpowers for being able to sort that man out from a crowd. He's just some dude. That's the one phrase.
I feel like what elevates his character design is that the character animation for this movie is really good. I think that's one of its strongest aspects.
That's fair. Yeah.
And like it elevates, like he's able to animate like even though he's got like a plain Jane design, like even if he has the most best plain Jane peak John every anime design possible, his facial expressions that they're able to give him, both of when he's in his own body and Mitsuha giving him, you know, the more feminine expressions, I think that is what's pushing him out of the range of, like, for me at least, of, man, this is just some basic bitch like NPC to, oh, that's Taki, your name.
Yeah, I do really like how when Mitsuha switches into Taki's body, you can, like, even without having any reference aside from like the very opening scene of the movie as to what Taki's like posture would be in an average situation, you instantly see Mitsuha's body language and is like, yeah, she, like, Taki would never have that body language because Mitsuha's like cowering everywhere. Speaking of Mitsuha, I feel like we've got on a fair bit about Taki, unless you have like some based Taki moments that I didn't pick up on that you want to regale us with right now.
The rest of Taki's based moments are gonna come when like the end of the movie comes and they come together.
All right, so I'll go into Mitsuha then, because Mitsuha instantly shocked me with how much I enjoyed her. So we spend like the first 20 or so minutes of the movie, something like that, maybe 25, just getting to know Mitsuha's personality and life, and then have her switch into Taki's body and see how she interacts in there. She's like so well set up in such a short amount of time, where she's like, you know, so her family, or rather her grandma, who is, you know, instilling this down into Mitsuha and her sister, is that they're carrying on these traditions from days gone by, and they don't know exactly why they're doing these traditions. They say that you know, like the reasons got like burned in a fire, you know, some of like the texts that explains the rationale, but nonetheless, through some oral, you know, passing it on orally and through teaching others the traditions, they've managed to keep certain traditions going, like you know, dancing in this like shrine-esque place or something like that. And, you know, they go into this place that's like the gateway to the other world, which is, by the way, absolutely beautiful. It like takes my breath away every time I see it.
Yeah, it is great. Definitely the best location in the movie, and upon rewatch, actually is more different from the pit from Lost Voices than I remember.
Yeah, they're rather similar, but, you know, they are a bit different. But I digress. The point is, you know, she's like into these religious-esque traditions, and that's instantly interesting to me, at least. But also, we get like some of her relationships with her father, which is very combative, because he, her mother died, and ever since then he wasn't the same, and he forsook the traditions that were passed down by her grandma, and you know, is a political guy. You know, he's doing politics. And there's even one point where Tessie is like, I smell corruption here, with Mitsuha's dad like talking to other presumably political candidates trying to get deals made or whatever. And She's very clearly upset about, her father leaving, and they have like a very combative relationship, and her father is very strict and she doesn't like that. Interesting character relationships being set up from the beginning. She has like a fun dynamic with her friends, and there's a lot of emphasis put on how she wants to get out of Itamori. She wants to move into the city and be in Tokyo. And she literally says, very, very conveniently, I want to be reborn as a hot guy in Tokyo. I don't know why she said hot guy, but sure, whatever. We'll go with that.
I mean,
Trans Mitsuha.
Do you want to be reborn as an ugly guy?
I mean, I don't know why she said a guy specifically, though. Well, why not be a hot girl in Tokyo? Trans Mitsuha.
I mean, I was going to say something along the lines of, we do have the privileges.
True. Maybe she just wants the privileges. But I digress. Once again, we're good at digressing. A Castaway anime staple. And, that's set up. She has a decently fun personality. She's almost like an every woman, but at the same time, she's got rather effeminate and at times bubbly, and at others very combative, which I liked. She has, obviously with her father, but there's a shocking amount of times, especially when she's talking to Mitsuha talking to Mitsuha, talking to Taki, where she's just getting angry at him and you calling him a pervert and all of that sort of stuff. And that's always fun to see from her. Yeah, I just like Mitsuha more. And also she has a great design.
Yeah, I think she at this juncture of the Shinkai Marathon, she's probably the best designed character in his entire filmography. Not even the guys from Garden of Words come close.
Although, now that you've brought up Garden of Words, I can't help myself. How messed is it that Garden of Words is 45 minutes long, and both of its characters are better than any of the characters in this movie?
Yeah.
How messed is that?
That does just go to show how incredible of a film that one is.
Yeah, I do like Mitsuha, though. The side characters, they're always fun for what screen time they have. I don't think any of them are going to particularly stick with me, but they aren't boring. They do liven up the mood whenever they're around and do their job well. And I'd say, that's good writing right there. That's the hallmark of good writing.
Yeah, they're not boring characters. And I think I'll remember Sayaka and Teshi maybe a little more than Okudera and Tsukasa. I'll definitely forget Tsukasa and Takagi the soonest, but they serve their purpose well, and they give enough of a decent chemistry with our two main characters to bounce off of.
I'll remember Okudera because she's hot.
She is very hot. She's not the hottest Shinkai girl, though.
Who's the hottest Shinkai girl?
We're probably gonna get to her in Weathering with You, and who knows, maybe Suzume has one that's gonna fucking blow me away.
Oh yeah, Suzume's gonna blow us away.
But until then, I would say, yeah, Yukino still.
Fair enough. I have two Shinkai-centric comments to put down. All right, so first of all, Mitsuha's sleeping form is introduced feet first, but Taki's sleeping form is introduced hands first. I just need to get that on the record. I did notice that.
That is pretty... I don't know if that's coincidental or not.
I mean, it could be a coincidence. It probably is, but it just needs to be on the record. All right, and second of all, Shinkai was going through some sort of depressive episode when he wrote, Mitsuha's complaining about You know, Itomori just has nothing in it. And I swear, Shinkai must have been going through something rough when he wrote that there's a train comes every 2 hours. Only one train every 2 hours? That's Shinkai's worst nightmare. And then, but get this, in Tokyo, one of the shots is of 5 trains next to each other, back to back. And Shinkai must have been going through something great when he drew that frame. He was like in the best possible mood, like, yeah, I'm gonna put all these trains in Tokyo. Point is,
you want to know what the train counter is up to for the Your Name movie?
How much is it?
I counted 25.
I think that's our highest number yet.
Yes, once again, it is inflated because there are a couple multi-train shots, so I had to count those individually. I'm thinking Garden of Words might actually have like more overall total shots of trains, but as far as just quantity of trains by themselves, Your Name has the current record.
So I feel like we've gotten into the characters well and fine enough, unless there's a Mitsuha moment that you absolutely need to regale us with.
I will say I watched the dub for this one, and it's a decent dub, but it does unfortunately unable to translate one of the best jokes in the movie, which you can only appreciate if you like, not only if you're in the sub, but you would only appreciate this joke if you actually know some Japanese. And I'm sure you know.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the pronoun joke.
Yeah, where Taki at first says something with like in a way that like indicates he's a girl, then changes it to I think something gender neutral or whatever. At least my subs translated it as just like a bunch of words that sound at first saying her and then something that sounded vaguely similar. I forget exactly what, because I just translated it as in my own head as, oh yeah, it's like Japanese referring to things in a feminine way versus a masculine one, or like referring to the self in that way. I think. I don't know exactly what the Japanese translation would mean. I was just inferring.
I think it was like she starts out saying watashi, and then it says boku wa, and then it ends up, then when she finally gets to ore, which is like the masculine way of saying I, then the guys are like nodding like, yeah, that's the right one.
That nod with both of them nodding simultaneously does live rent free in my head. That is hilarious. So I guess we can get more into the plot, although in discussing the plot holes, we've already talked about a lot of the different plot bits. So yeah, we already went into the main conceit, and he figures out Mitsuha died in the accident, and then he goes back in time to save her. Now, already we've got a huge problem there, going back in time. How does he do that? Well, he goes to a shrine in Itomori, and then upon going into that shrine, he realizes, oh wait, there's gamer girl spit trapped in these little bottles. And they've got moss all over them, because earlier in the movie, Mitsuha made, I think it's called Ochizusake, whatever, something like that.
Yeah.
And he's immediately like, okay, I'm gonna drink that. And as he's saying it, hold on, I need to get the exact note because I quote it like bit for bit. Oh, hold on, cover for me.
Oh God, oh God, the bad time I was chewing food while you were building that up.
Oh,
oh fuck.
Okay, I found it. Okay, so he says, Masubi, if time really can be undone, give me another chance. Now, my first question was, why is Taki saying that? And there is an explanation. The explanation, I think, is that Taki, he's basically desperate to get Mitsuha back any possible way. So he's going out on this limb and being like, maybe, he's remembering the Masubi conversation through, I guess, deja vu or whatever. It's one of the things that stuck with him. Once again, inconsistent memory, but I digress. Point is, he's like going out on this limb to drink the gamer girl spit of all things. I guess I can almost... I'm like so close to buying into it, but there's a problem. Because when he says, Musubi, if time really can be undone, give me another chance, that's exposition. That's him saying the movie's canon explanation for how he's able to go back in time. It's like mysticism, religious type stuff where, through Musubi, which connects everyone, this like mysterious force, and which is symbolized through the red yarn of fate, which Mitsuha wears in her hair and Taki wears around his wrist. He's going back in time through that like mystical connection. But because of that, what the scene came off as to me while watching it is Taki, less so him going out on this like desperate limb, and more because he says it in like this completely like almost deadpan matter-of-fact tone, Musubi, if time really can be undone, give me another chance, just like sort of saying it, and I was like, that's exposition. It's just him like, it almost feels like he's read the script of the movie and then offers that explanation to the audience. And you can say it's like not a plot hole or that, Taki doing that makes sense, but it feels weird. Even if it like technically, you can provide an getting for it, it just feels wrong. And that's not even getting into the fact that, oh, you can go on?
I was just gonna say that it feels like that's something he would say in the moment, like that it is his only chance to or at least he thinks it's his only chance to reconnect with Mitsuha again, and at this point in the movie he kind of like has no choice but to believe that because he stopped switching with her.
I guess like I'm imagining, if I wanted to like really hard sell the desperation, I wouldn't have him say in like sort of a bland tone almost, like, Musubi, if time really can... I've said it like a billion times, but I'd make it... I'd make the fact that it's like completely going out on a limb, that he's just being completely desperate for anything, like more apparent, as is, like you said, like you can imagine Taki saying that. But the fact that it is just straight up the movie's explanation makes
Taki's a more reserved man than I am. If that were my only chance to get a cute boonies girl GF that I was switching bodies with, I wouldn't have drank it so slowly and properly. I would have downed that whole bottle. Fucking alcohol be damned.
But more than that though, because that you can chalk that up to a nitpick. What the bigger issue is that Musubi is basically just Shinkai's... Okay, so there's two examples in this movie of Shinkai using like very mystical logic in order to just basically do whatever, right? This mystical logic explains everything away. The second bit is when he says, or rather, the Garden of Words teacher says, Yukino, Twilight, when the world blurs and you encounter something not quite human. That and Musubi are the crux of all this movie's insane plot shenanigans that don't make sense unless you completely buy into this like mystical power that can just do whatever at any point. And on a certain level, you can handwave it as like, oh, it's just magical bullshit. A lot of shows have that. A lot of good shows have that. And
isn't it crazy how even with all of this, it still beats you over the head less than the teacher explanation of the death, finding two lovers in death story from fucking Children Who Chase Lost Voices?
Yeah. This movie has so much more going on, yet has so much less dry exposition. It's insane. But... that's really where everything comes from. And so why does drinking Mitsuha's spit alcohol get him back into her body? I mean, it's just Musubi, man. It's just Musubi, bro. Don't think about it. Just accept it blindly.
I mean, for this to work, I feel like it has to. And to be fair, it does kind of justify it by having the most beautifully animated sequence in any Shinkai film probably to date following that.
That is it is very beautiful, to be fair. Actually, while I was watching this movie, I came up with an alternate path for the plot that the plot could have taken that I would have preferred. Because I liked Mitsuha so much, I was like, what would need to happen for Mitsuha to become the protagonist of this film more so than Taki? And then I thought about it and I was like, okay, so what if the grandma can see into the future and but like there's fate, so you can't actually change like the deaths in Itamori, but the one thing she has is to like find some way to make sure that Taki is in Mitsuha's body when the meteor crashes, and so Mitsuha in Taki's body like has the switches stop, and she tries to figure it out in Taki's body. I don't know, I thought that would have been fun, have like the grandma be the ultimate villain who killed Taki, that son of a bitch, and they'd have to like overcome fate, and then that would be like an actual mechanic of the story that's like, still kind of like, you could argue, just random magical bullshit, but like Steins Gate did that, and Steins Gate doesn't have many serious plot holes that I can think of. Obviously it's a little goofy and loosey-goosey with the logic at times, but it like nonetheless, you can find it more difficult to find plot holes in that. So, I don't know, I would have been down for that movie. But as it stands, it is just kind of like, we can justify anything so long as it's wrapped up in this like mystical logic that does whatever the plot needs it to at any given point.
Yes, that is Shinkai's way of thinking. You are not wrong to be saying that.
But I like it when there's like mechanics. Like I just remembered this. So I know we're skipping ahead a little bit, but it's sort of like on that same note, where at the end, or near the end of the movie, Mitsuha and Taki see each other like on top of the the place where the worlds come together. You enter into a new world, and simultaneously there's twilight. What's twilight? Well, it's when the world blurs and you encounter something not quite human. So because of that, Taki and Mitsuha just randomly, their timelines align and they like see each other again, and then somehow they like know that as soon as twilight is over, they'll no longer be able to see each other.
Yeah, that was the worst part of that scene for me. It was when they acknowledged that the magic hour, whatever, the twilight hour is almost up. It would have been so much more effective. Because all right, so first of all, the scene where they meet each other on that top of the like shrine ring mountain range or whatever is the best scene in the movie. I don't think that's a controversial take.
It is really heartwarming. I'm not sure about, although I do struggle to think of something that beats it out. So yeah, maybe the art house sequence if you're really into that. Although I still prefer that.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's the most beautiful one. But like in terms of like my favorite, like with the character interaction and advancing the plot, I think it's the best scene in the movie.
It's the most emotionally resonant. I'll give you that.
Yeah, and then so they're sitting up there. Their paths finally cross. I love how as they're looking forward, this brief cut of the of Mitsuha's hairband tying them together, and they can feel each other's presence. And then once the magic hour finally begins, they see each other in space, like despite their time displacement. And it's real heartwarming.
Dude, the bit where Taki like takes the Masubi ribbon off of his wrist and ties it back onto Mitsuha's head is like a way to signal like it's all in your hands now. That was amazing. I love that.
Speaking of the ribbon, I also like how we can use the hairband to tell when Mitsuha's in her body and when she's not, because she only ever wears it when like she's in her body. Taki doesn't wear it when he's in her body. I thought that was neat.
Yeah, it's like it's clever keeping the movie like visually coherent, because it can get rather confusing with the body swapping shenanigans, and it's a way to make it more discernible.
Yeah, and Mitsuha like is crying upon seeing Taki, and like the first thing she does is just like go over to him and embrace him. and like Taki's just like comforting her. Like, and this is all to like better like put in the contrast of when Mitsuha earlier in the timeline of the movie went to Tokyo to try to find Taki, and she does see him, but for some reason he's like, oh, I'm like, who are you? What a weird girl. And because at this point Mitsuha doesn't realize, but they are switching through time, and she is meeting Taki from 3 years in the past instead of the timeline that he's switching bodies with. So she's able to give him her hairband when they get separated, and then because like you see her for the first time where it's like, hey Taki, it's me on the train, and like Taki's just like, who the fuck are you weird girl, and she's like so visibly disappointed. And now like you put that up against their second meeting on that mountain range where they like she's just crying and Taki's embracing her like, yeah, you're Mitsuha, and she's like, you finally remember. Like that's good. That the whole scene up there, like I was like, as I'm rewatching the movie, I'm like, man, Taki and Mitsuha's like romance, like their romantic relationship is less established than I remembered. I remember them being like,
oh yeah,
way more
I also
in love
had
with
that
this.
issue.
And then as soon as they met up, I'm like, oh my god, I love these two. The OTP, they deserve all the happiness.
Well, see, I love that interaction when they're, you know, together at Twilight. Does like so much heavy lifting for their relationship, it's unreal. Because before that, the only rapport they've built is them like arguing with each other over like through notes and diary entries about like, oh my lord, you're like messing up my life. Stop flashing your panties, my panties, Taki. And it's like, for much of the movie, it's sort of hard to I mean, I understand on a cognitive level that, like, yeah, if you're switching bodies with someone over time and space, you're probably going to be, like, super obsessed with her and wanting to know more about the situation. But it's, like, a little hard to understand the romance, even if it makes sense, just because we've been given no evidence to suggest that other than Mitsuha. You know, she's clearly beat up about, like, hooking him up.
Quick to fall in love with him when it seems like they're, yeah, like you said, they haven't shown much attraction to each other. But then you get to that scene on the mountain range, and they act like they've been in love with each other the whole movie, and they're like Romeo and Juliet who couldn't be together, but now they are.
Yeah, and it just it does such a good job of putting, I guess, like reigniting the relationship or whatever, or like making you believe in it more. Even if the path up to that moment is kind of like, you're just like arguing with each other.
Yeah, then I like how even despite all that, they're arguing a little bit, even at the top of the mountain range where.
But it's like fun arguing.
Yeah,
like,
where she's like,
it feels like a natural part of their relationship.
Yeah, like they're like she's getting embarrassed and upset about how many times he fondled her chest, and how. Like how how he drank her e-girl spit, but it all like is thrown into the face of like their dynamic is like so instantly fun and gratifying, and that this is the moment that the movie has been working towards this whole time. This has been the ultimate goal, to connect these two characters. So I will continue to give Shinkai his props for this one. The pen dropping scene is still such a gut punch.
It is very well directed, where it's like so sudden. But admittedly, I was a little distracted, still thinking about how like they read the script. They know that Twilight is the thing that's like getting them together. Like, I don't know why they came to that conclusion. But I mean, I guess if you're traveling back in time and body swapping, then sure, you'll believe any mysticism at that point. Maybe they just remember what Yukino said in class back then.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I would have taken that part out. It would have been way more like emotionally. It would like if the pen dropping scene as it is now is a gut punch, then having like without the the warning of, oh no, our time is almost up, but hey, before we go, let's just trade names on let's write each other's names on ourselves so we don't forget this time. And then like, and it would have been so much more just like heart crunchingly, like the heart evisceratingly powerful if like after Taki writes whatever he writes on Mitsuha's hand is, then Mitsuha goes, she writes the first line, pen drops, music cuts, the silence, like holy shit, like
that would have been more
imagine how hard that would have hit without warning.
And from there, you know, Taki, or I guess now Mitsuha is carrying on the torch of Taki's plan, which is very, like every time Mitsuha is back in the protagonist's seat, my face lights up. So that was the part of the finale that, you know, like the first half with Taki is really well done, I think, overall. But the second Mitsuha's back in the driver's seat, continuing Taki's plan, and like, you know, it almost feels like destiny where it's like they're working together as a team in order to save the town. That was great. I love that aspect of it.
Yeah, and I will say this scene in particular, which is also one of the best moments in the entire movie and one of the most powerful, no amount of like there's no asterisk to this one. This one is just like pure, this one's pure cinema. This is pure Kino. When Mitsuha's like just running, she's running out of time. She's fallen down, like rolls down the street, and she's all beat up, and she's sad. She's like, "Oh, I forgot his name. How the fuck did I forget his name? Wait, I remember that. Like the last thing he did was that he wrote his name on my hand." And so her hand is like curled up. She opens it up, and instead of his name, it just says "I love you," and like that's fucking good.
That is. And I also love the moment at the end where she finally, like, you know, she's like standing up to her dad with like all these, you know, she's clearly beat up, but she's like, no, you need to help us save the town, Dad. And you know, her dad's like taken aback at how much fire is in her right now. You know, she's so beat up at that point, and how hard she's trying to save everyone. I thought that was a very gratifying moment for Mitsuha's character, because she's always been seen as like the more the less confrontational of the two. You know, Taki is the hot-headed and you know, very very aggressive of the two, whereas Mitsuha, you know, tends to just go with the flow more and accept the punches. But at the end, you know, she finally reverses that and is like, no, we're saving this town, and I'm not listening to you, Dad. You need to help us, bro. Mucho kinography, essentially.
Yeah, speaking of kinography, we gotta, before we get to the end of the podcast, we gotta talk about the lengths that Shinkai went through to make this movie one of the most unconventionally geniusly constructed movies ever, / one of the worst movies to watch a second time. Because we went on for a long time about the amount of plot holes and how severe they are, but we didn't talk enough about how Shinkai expertly went about hiding them and stuffing them under the rug so you don't notice it until the movie's over.
Yeah, you know, that sort of goes hand in hand with the movie's really great pacing for the most part, because things are constantly moving, they're constantly happening, there's things going on, and you know, at the end, you're thinking more about the emotional resonance of the movie than the actual logic putting, you know, all those events together. And, you know, like, for example, one of my favorite examples of this, because it's so obvious yet so few people catch it their first time, is when, like, the fact that in order for Taki and Mitsuha to, you know, in order for this plot to work, Taki and Mitsuha need to have, like, not looked at a calendar for a span of, like, multiple months while they're in each other's body and not written it down, you know, just not realizing it. But because most of their time spent in each other's body is the super quick, fast-paced montage with, like, tons of energy, super upbeat, super fun, and then it immediately cuts to, like, you know, more plot building. It's like, it doesn't really give you much of a chance to catch it, because most of the time spent in each other's body is just fast-paced, energetic, them building rapport with each other and arguing. And it does a very good job of covering it up.
Yeah, how could I possibly think about the logistics and the mechanics behind this body switching when I'm watching these two teenagers in each other's bodies in these drastically different settings, exploring these different themes? My brain can't possibly spend all that time worrying about that right now.
And that, the fact that the movie is so dense with just sheer concepts really works to its benefit in that regard. Even though once you stop looking at all the pretty lights and the distractions, you realize, wait a second, this is like incredibly flimsy. Or like how the movie goes to great lengths to set up Musubi, this mysticism, this air of like strange things happening, so that when you first see like all the weird stuff happening, you can, like your first time through the movie, you can think, well, maybe there's more of an explanation. Maybe this is a mystery. And even, if you're that type of guy, you can say, well, I buy into the mysticism completely. Obviously, that doesn't hand-wave everything, but nonetheless, it's still there, even if it's doing way more heavy lifting than I think it ought to be.
Yeah, it's a stroke of genius. Like, it's impressive. And also, to be fair, that on your first watch, and if you're spoiler free, you don't know that they're switching through time until like the end of the second act, beginning of the third act of the movie. So you're not thinking about that. But even like questions like, hey, why don't they just call each other on their phones first thing? You can't even be thinking of that. You're too busy watching Taki in Mitsuha's body playing basketball and seeing her like braless tits bounce up and down. There's too much good directing, too much fun, upbeat, Radwimps music.
It is a very, very good song for the scene. It immediately like kicks the movie into overdrive almost, where it's like going, it's like this slow build up until this point. That's admittedly very clever, but like, you're sort of sitting in the atmosphere, even if things are continuously happening. Then bam, it's like almost jarring, but like in a good way, where it just all of a sudden everything comes to life.
Yeah, and we never spend too much time with like one side of the main character's story before like it gets too boring. We always make sure to switch back to either them in the other's body or just themselves at the right time, which does lend into your thing about how well paced the movie is on that front. So on that front, I will agree with it.
Although there's still a part of me that wishes that Mitsuha was like the primary protagonist, because I just like her so much more.
She's at the beginning, pretty much the primary protagonist. Yeah, at the beginning, and then up until
Taki gets like the bulk of the plot, though, is what I mean. He's the one driving forward the plot and like doing all the until the very end where they finally switch back.
Yeah, I'd say Act 1 is all Mitsuha and with a little Taki. Act 2 is like all Taki with a little Mitsuha, and then Act 3 is like a nice blending of the two.
I mean, I guess, but admittedly, I do sort of. This is more of a personal thing, just because I like Mitsuha so much. Because I imagine if you like them both around the same amount, then this is like a very good way to spread out the time. But if you're like me and you're really hooked into Mitsuha and you just want to see more of her,
see now you know how I felt
seem
about
like a little
Kyoko.
Bit of a drought. Yeah,
now about Kyoko
I understand the same
to.
thing now. I'm feeling a Mitsuha drought. I need the e-girl spit in my mouth, goddammit.
Don't we all? And I think that just about brings us to the ending of the movie, where the big plan to basically commit terrorism. There's no other way around it. It's just terrorism.
Based based Your Name endorsing terrorism like this. This is something all the youth need to see.
Hey,
in order
terrorism
to know that
is
terrorism
okay
is
if it's ultimately
yes.
for the greater good.
But yeah, they commit some terrorism. Mitsuha, like I said,
they do a little
convinces her dad.
terrorizing.
Yeah, we do a little terrorizing. Bold impact font. There's one point where it does seem like, you know, maybe the plan won't go, you know, maybe it won't happen how we plan it. And then Mitsuha, like the last minute, manages to get her father on board where Taki failed. And then Itamori gets saved by everyone going into the school together. And it gets reported on as like, as if they were drilling for a disaster. But no, it was Taki and Mitsuha's machinations that got that to happen. And, you know, the day has been saved. Except Taki and Mitsuha have forgotten all about their time spent together, just like was destined for them. And, you know, Taki, it's mostly told through Taki's perspective, where he's like, you know, I don't know what happened back then. I don't remember much of it. I know I was obsessed with Itamori, but other than that, like, I'm drawing a blank. And, you know, I just feel like I'm missing something. Just like multiple times where he's walking through Tokyo and sees Mitsuha, you know, he turns around, but then he's like, you know, he writes it off as like weird sense of deja vu, because that's essentially his life now, just constantly living in the state of like, I feel like there's something that I need to do. I feel like that reminds me of something, but you know, he never quite seizes it.
They're having peak schizo moments.
Yeah. essentially. But at the very end, you know, they see each other in a train, of course.
Yeah,
like, riding a train.
Like, what a genius shot again by Shinkai to incorporate both his fetish for trains and also fatalizing relationships by distance by just literally putting them on opposite trains, having them see each other through the windows, of the trains, and then they just separate them via the tracks.
It's very well directed though, like you said. And you know, like the second they're off the trains, they just start running, like trying to figure out, okay, where did that other train go? Where can I find Mitsuha? And eventually, they see each other on a staircase. They're both like, you know, looking each other in the eyes, but no, they both at first write it off as, oh, it's just another pointless emotion of like deja vu, just not going to go anywhere. But eventually, Taki turns around when they've, you know, climbed opposite ends of the staircase, and he's like, "Yo, I feel like I've seen you before. Can you like tell me your name?" Mitsuha's like, "Yo, I feel like I've seen you before. What a coincidence." Anyway, let's share names. Then it scrolls up Your Name title card credits.
Yeah, they really said, "Can you tell me your name?" And then the title card credits. It could not have been executed more perfectly.
This really do be a Bocchi the Rock, it's Morbin time moment. No, what she should have said is, it's Naaman time.
It's your time.
It's my time to be with you, our name. I don't know where I was going with that. But point is,
your time to learn my name.
There we go.
It's your time to kimi. I'm about to kimi the fuck out of this Nonawa.
And with that, you know, decently emotional ending, and then, you know, we get credits, and it's Ogre. Anything I missed that you want to exposit to the audience that you found interesting?
Viewers, if you are upset with the nature of this podcast being like overall positive on the movie as a whole, but just harping on the negatives, please, if you have only seen Your Name once, watch it again. Like this movie is the kind of movie I would recommend to everyone to see twice.
Yeah, if you want like an accurate depiction of it, or if you went through it the first time not realizing most of its flaws, watching it again a second time. Although another thing too, which is the trap I sort of fell in, where I watched it for the first time, liked it, realized all its flaws, felt betrayed, thought I hated it now, rewatched it, was like, wait, it's still a good movie though. It's still got good aspects, and I just like Mitsuha. She's there we go. That's the good part of Your Name. It's Mitsuha. Everything to do with her.
Everything that does have to do with Mitsuha is fucking trash. It was also nice to see. What?
You said it was all trash.
Yeah, that everything had not to do with Mitsuha.
Yeah.
But no, I do like at the end, I forgot to mention this, that we seeing all of the side characters from both Tokyo and Itomori. That's nice. That's just a nice little way to tie a little bow on the whole thing.
Yeah, both the side characters end up as couples. Okudera and, I don't know, like Taki's friend, I don't know his name. And then Tessie and, what's her name?
Sayaka?
Sayaka, there we go. I thought it was Sayaka, but I wasn't 100% sure. I could have looked super smart and like I have a good memory.
Did Tsukasa and Okudera get together, or was that just like a one?
They never. All right, so they show Okudera's ring, but they never show her with Tsukasa. But like, it could only be Tsukasa. Like, judging from what's in the film, that's the obvious pick. Because Okudera and Tsukasa were getting good chemistry together, and obviously she didn't get with Taki. She could have just like married some rando, but I feel like it's what you were supposed to do is extrapolate and say, well, she's totally marrying Tsukasa. There's no one else it could be.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of like any other last minute things. Oh yeah, I guess we can wrap up with what was the score you gave Your Name when you had first seen it?
A strong 4.
A 4. And all right, so now I gave it a 9 when I first saw it. So what have our scores changed to from all this time?
Well, I will say at the beginning, first off, that if you gave this movie like a 9 or a 10, I just don't understand where you're coming from.
In my defense, I had seen more than 3 movies at the time.
But like, I just don't understand how you give it. Yeah. Like, I just don't understand how anyone could give this like a 9 out of 10. Like, even with Garden of Words, where I was like,
I can understand it the first time. If you had told me I've seen Your Name like at least twice, and yeah, it's a 9 out of 10, I'm like, really?
Yeah, I guess, but like to give it a 9, I feel like you have to have either not thought about any of its plot holes or like somehow justified all of them in your head, which is weird.
Now, I could see someone... Here's a question, and this is like the common defense for this type of thing. Do the plot holes really matter in the face of like the emotional weight of the narrative?
Yes. And the reason why yes. Yeah. I mean, first of all, in some instances you strain belief so hard that it becomes comical, like when the text messages are glitching out and getting deleted. And like when they don't check a calendar. I love making jokes about that. That's hilarious to me because it's just so insane to ever believe that. I guess if you just really, really buy into like the atmosphere and the characters and the emotions of the story and just literally do not care about anything else, then yeah, it's okay for you to be like, yeah, I don't care about those plot holes. But you have to at least acknowledge that people who do think about the plot and do have issues with it, that it's a valid perspective to have. It's my perspective, and you know,
and it's the only one that matters.
Yeah, there we go. I'd give it a 7.
I was debating back and forth in my head between 7 and an 8 because I know it can't be a 9. It just cannot be a 9. And I was thinking like, is it does what it get right like elevated to an 8, or does everything that it like ends up lacking on this rewatch, does it like damn it even more? And I think like the deciding factor was when I put the movie in like the face of Shinkai's filmography, and how like all of his movies are, with the exception of Lost Voices, which I suppose you can even make the argument that it is also kind of a there's elements of romance between I think Asuna had an attraction to Shun, and the teacher guy's whole quest was to bring his dead wife back. So that was the whole thing. In the face of like their relationships and their romances, Take and Mitsuha, like it's like the thing we were talking about earlier, like how when they are together, it's like, oh my god, it's like they were a couple the whole time. But like you really think about it, and they kind of weren't. Like there wasn't enough time dedicated to like establishing them communicating with each other in a way that would lend to the believability that, yeah, these two are falling in love. And especially when we get to Weathering with You and we see just exactly how believable the romance is between Hina and Hodaka. Once we get to that, like, that's gonna blow this relationship out of the fucking water.
I am absolutely sure of that. Yeah, it's a good movie, and I was surprised by how much I did legitimately enjoy myself. It was a great thing to, wake up today and immediately start watching. I had a good time doing so, but in the face of like all the plot holes and how disproportionate my investment was in the characters, I think 7 is like the only fair score I could give it.
Yeah, I also had to come to the conclusion, like, it's a 7, but it's a very strong 7. It's knocking on the door to an 8 out of 10, but it's frustrating for me to give it a 7, but it's like, because I can see the masterpiece in here that Shinkai is like wrote. Your Name, here's the thing. Your Name comes across as like Shinkai wrote the first draft, he wrote the outline and wrote the first draft of this movie and was like, this is my magnum opus. This is the one that's going to make me big. This is going to be the one I'm remembered for. And then he was like so confident in it. Of course, I'm being facetious with all this. He's being so confident with it. He's like, fuck it. We're sending the guy. I'm doing it the first time. We're doing it one take. This is like that. Well, I've written this perfectly. It cannot possibly be better. And like he pitched it to all of his crew, and they're like, oh my god, they're all like getting swept up in his genius because they're all seeing all like the good moments and the sheer amount of like heart and concepts and trains, all the fucking trains in the movie. And they're all like on board. And it's not until they're in production and like they're going over the writer's room and they're like, hey, Mr. Shinkai, how do they not look at a calendar for 3 years? And Shinkai just like goes, you can hear a pin drop, the room goes dead silent. It's like, fuck. All right, and then he's like, then the writing room is like scrambling to be like, okay, what is like, we're too far in production to like change the entire script. We've got the investors like knocking down our doors. So, all right, what if we do everything in our power to make the audience just like not even think about it? And that's how we've gotten to where we are today. This movie feels like it could have used a couple more rewrites. It does kind of feel like they had the outline and the first draft and they sent it through. It was a pretty good first draft as far as first drafts go. And of course, I'm saying this with no evidence to say it's a first draft. That's what it feels like. I'm sure this movie went through several drafting processes, and the fact that
as someone who has written a first draft before, I can assure you mine are like 10 times worse than this.
Yeah, like then again, I suppose that does make it all the more damning to think about if this movie did go through several draft stages, that they never caught on to the plot holes, or maybe they did and they just couldn't figure out a way to tool the movie into working with it without like drastically reducing the emotional moments of it, or they just weren't able to, so just like, all right, we'll do as much cinematic sleight of hand as possible to brush over it.
My theory, I once again have very little evidence to go off of for this. I think that Shinkai is one of those dudes that's like, I don't care about like specific plot holes and logic. I just want to make an emotional narrative. And so he makes an emotional narrative. And he doesn't care about the plot holes, but he has to make it at the very least look like it's logical in order for people to, at the very least, enjoy it, think it's like a great movie. And that's where some of the like very brief explanations and sleight of hands happen. I just don't think he cares. Obviously, he cares about making good films and directing them well and telling an impactful story, but I don't think he's particularly invested in making it all make complete logical sense.
At least not in this one. I feel like once we get to Weathering with You next week, we're gonna see like we might be on the verge of peak Shinkai. Like this is gonna be I have a very strong feeling that Weathering with You will end up being maybe the best movie of the bunch, if not slightly losing out a little to Garden of Words perhaps, but I'm sure when it comes to like our average ratings of it, I think we'll both agree that it's gonna end up being the best one.
I am like convinced that I'm gonna love Weathering with You this time around,
because it has all of the same like beats that Your Name has emotionally and tonally.
It's Your Name without the plot holes.
Yeah, and with better side characters. I even when I first saw Weathering with You, I was like, this is just Your Name but better. It's just like like Your Name 2.0.
But all the reviews are like, it's Your Name but worse, and I'm like, what? Huh?
But I guess we'll have.
What
to
are you
get
talking
to that.
about?
I guess we'll have to get to that next week in this penultimate conclusion to Shinkai Month on the Castaway Anime Podcast.
It's almost here. It is so close.
It's been a wild ride, and it's very, very eye-opening, and it's going to all come to a head next week before the big actual conclusion of it in April, when we put up we'll see how well this statement ages, a very timely review of Suzume.
Well, now that you've said that, it's gonna age like milk, obviously.
Yeah, something's gonna happen, and the episode had to get delayed by a month.
But yeah, so far, even with all the lowlights, I can still say that Shinkai Month has overall been an eye-opening experience, and that I do, in fact, enjoy some of Shinkai's works, and especially rewatching Your Name after all this time.
It is, in fact, a good movie.
And by the way, whenever we get to Suzume, we need to do the final ranking. Rank all of them in order.
Yeah, I agree.
That's gonna be super interesting.
And if you want to make sure you don't miss that, viewer, you can go ahead and do so by liking the video, heading down to the comments to let us know what you thought, and subscribing to the channel so you don't miss an episode of the Castaway Anime Podcast or the conclusion of Shinkai Month.
Be there, or else. This is a threat. Oh, you know what? Be there, or else we're gonna shit all over Weathering with You. That's right. If you don't come and listen to that podcast, we're just gonna be super negative the whole time.
Wait, how would they know that if by the time it goes up?
I mean, it makes more sense than Your Name's plot.
We tied it all together. Alright, well, I think that'll bring us to an end of this episode of the Castaway Anime Podcast. I'm Neon Manta.
And I'm Prisley Fritter.
And you'll see us next time.